Hello and welcome to this Google Hangout on Air, the NMC Horizon Report 2013 K-12 edition. Consider, connect, collaborate. The NMC Horizon Report 2013 K-12 edition is a product of the New Media Consortium's Horizon Project, an ongoing research effort that examines emerging technologies for their potential impact on and use in teaching, learning, and creative inquiry within education around the globe. The report is a collaboration of the New Media Consortium, the Consortium for School Networking, and the International Society for Technology and Education, and is generously funded by HP. This is the second in a series of 3 programs produced by Crosse with support from HP to accompany this year's report. Each serves as a platform for sharing of observations, experiences, and resources related to the emerging technologies cited in the report. I'm Vicki Bigham, President of Bigham Technology Solutions, Inc. I'm very honored to serve as Crosse's professional development consultant and also very pleased to be moderating this session today. In the last session, we talked about some of the key trends and significant challenges represented in the 2013 K-12 Horizon Report. And today we're going to bring to you 3 educational leaders who are going to talk about some of the technologies that were also cited in the report. We'll be looking at cloud computing, open content, and mobile learning. With me today, I'd like to introduce Diane Dersch. Diane, you can wave. Diane's Chief Technology and Information Officer for the Green Bay Area School District in Wisconsin. We also have Vicki Lyons, Director, Technology and Media Services for the School District of La Crosse, also in Wisconsin. And Tom Woodward, Associate Director for Online Learning and Innovation for Virginia Commonwealth University. And we're all pleased also to have joining us Marcy Jang. Marcy is a project manager at Crosse, and she's supporting us in our Google Hangouts. So thanks to Marcy. On behalf of Crosse and our audience, thanks to each of you speakers for participating in what I know is going to be a very valuable conversation. So let's get to it. And Diane, I'd like to first turn to you. One of the technologies identified in the Horizon Report as being on the near-term horizon, that's being 1 year or less, is cloud computing. I know that you've been implementing cloud computing in your district, so go ahead and share with us some of the experiences you've had in doing so.
Certainly, and thank you very much, Vicki, for your introduction. I will share this screen with you, and let me tell you a little bit about Green Bay Area Public Schools. We're the 5th largest district in the state. We have a little over 21,000 students. You can see how many teachers and administrators we have as well. With 32 elementary schools and 10 secondary schools, you can see that in a larger school district like this, cloud computing can be very helpful. Our vision is to match the appropriate learning tool to the task. And so these are examples of devices that we have available to our students. We're concentrating now on the Common Core State Standards, grades 6 and 7, 8 and 9. And so our classroom teachers who teach math and English language arts have one of these devices, so they are portable, as well as carts of these devices available to them. So as opposed to the one-to-one concept, I call this one-to-many, in that students are using many devices to get the task done that they need to do. Now, as we move toward Google, okay, I've been Chief Technology and Information Officer for only about 4 months here in Green Bay. So the move to Google was made last spring, and now we're working on the transition. But here's some benefits that we saw to Google and cloud computing. First of all, it boosts productivity. Students and teachers have access to their files wherever they can be online, whether it be through their smartphone or some devices that they've brought from home in a bring your own device model, or on the devices that we provide at school. We also have that infinite backup. We're not saving on servers that are localized within our school district. We are saving out on the cloud, so we have access to all our items from any place that we can get online. So we could be at McDonald's, or we could be you know, at a hotel using a computer there and have access to the files that we have created and saved out on Google, out on the cloud. Notice that we can reduce our hardware. We're not using a lot of our servers to store student and teacher documents anymore. We're urging our students and teachers to save their things out in Google Drive, so that they can get to them easily from anywhere. And we also are reducing paperwork in that way, and then students are collaborating with their teachers and others right online, creating comments and notes so that things don't have to be printed out on paper. This allows us for real-time collaboration. Our students have access, and teachers, like I've said, we save on network space, and we can stay current. So if we have documents residing out on Google and we need to update them, we don't have to send them out again. We've given people the link. They go back to that link and they see that update. I always say start at the top, and that's what we've done here. You know, Google and the concept of cloud computing, you always hear about the cloud. What does it mean? It took some education and some use, some practical use. So that means that we've worked with the Board of Education, our cabinet members at our summer retreat. You know, we worked on vision cards and other things collaboratively, and we use that as a scaffold to build the knowledge around Google. So our administrators, our Board of Education understands how to access documents, how to add comments, how to work collaboratively, how to share things. And because of that, they brought that back to their teachers and the principals. So the expectations are, we have this agenda, we have it in Google, I'm going to share that link with you, you can add comments on the side or help me revise this document as we move forward. And we've found that that's really helped as we work to educate and set the expectation for cloud computing here in our district. You know, there's that song about accentuating the positive. That's something that we try to do as well. I mean, there are significant cost factors here. Google is free. Maybe other word processing or spreadsheet or presentation packages that need to be installed on computers. You know, we don't have to do that anymore, nor do we have to worry about students at home having the same applications on the computer that they have at school, because they can use word processing, spreadsheet, presentations, forms, all within Google, and they don't have to worry about whether they have an Office product at home that's the same as at school. This is collaborative as well. And so, you know, that's what we found to be very helpful. Students can work together, teacher and student can work together, teacher and teacher can work together, and save that one document where we're not emailing documents back and forth. Again, we've talked about saving money, which is always a factor within a public school system, as well as allowing teachers to do their work and allowing our students to do their work. Things to watch for when you're doing this. You know that you can share documents. There's such a thing as undersharing. So when you give somebody a link and they try to access it and can't get to it, that's a problem. And so you have to be real careful and understand how sharing settings work. There's also such a thing as oversharing, making that document available to everybody, more people than you want to have looking at that document. So I would urge that when you go through this and when you teach how to use Google, that you make sure that you help your users understand what sharing means. Authentication. Remembering your login and password. That's really important too. A lot of people have their own private Gmail accounts, so a school Google account is different, and you have to help people understand how to go back and forth between the two. Organizing things. How do you create folders? How do you put things in folders? How do you look up the most recent thing you worked on? Those are all things that people need help as well as they move forward. If you have multiple windows open with different versions, that can get confusing. So you have to teach people to close tabs, depending on which browser, tabs or windows, to make sure that they're updated with the most with the most current work of their Google pages. And then classroom management. How do you work with a bunch of students in the classroom? I know that you know, it's important to inform your parents. We've set up a website regarding Google and cloud computing for our schools. Notice that we have different versions of our information language as well as a website to help parents understand what this is about. So this is how our district has moved forward in using cloud computing. And I will make these websites available to you so you can kind of see the timeline that we followed as we implemented Google within our district, the common tools. We use something called ClassLink to help our students and teachers access things that are online, and that ties everything together and works very well with Google. We've had summer summits to train our staff. Those are all things that we've done to help prepare our teachers, and it's a continuing learning process as we move to that cloud computing.
That's great, Diane. A lot of great information there. Thanks for sharing that. I think your kind of timeline and roadmap on that would be very helpful to people viewing this today. One of the things I'm curious about, privacy is an understandable concern for schools. Did you encounter any pushback or issues around privacy? And if so, how did you handle that with your stakeholders?
Yeah, parents are, you know, as they should be, concerned about privacy, as well as our teachers, our administrators. This is something that we take very seriously. So yes, it's an education process for everybody. You know, the fact that we don't house these files on our servers, I think, causes some people to be worried about that. So really educating folks about the way Google works and how the security is set up is very important as you move forward to help kind of reduce some of the anxiety around that.
I like that you talked about the boosting productivity and the collaboration. I think we see a lot of things, benefits here. And I liked your always start at the top. That's a good tip for our viewers. If you really had 2 or 3 other key tips to give people that are just considering implementing a scalable and secure system, what would you say to them?
Well, you know, you have to figure out where you are right now. Where are you currently? And then if you hope to go to the cloud, what does that mean? And what are all the steps in between? For instance, we use Microsoft Office here. We use Outlook. We use Exchange. And so you can imagine that there might be some transitional difficulties. For instance, you know, we have calendars in Outlook. And now we've got people going to Google as well for their calendars. So if somebody does a busy search in Outlook, they might think that, oh, well, so-and-so is available to meet during this time. Well, it's really that that person is using a Google Calendar instead. Mm-hmm. So getting that timeline put together, and we're currently working on that, as to you know, when you're going to end of life the product that you are working on, or how you're going to make those 2 environments coexist, is important as you move forward. You know, school districts who have been with Google longer have said that people are automatically or naturally migrating to the Google environment, so they're using those calendars. But for some school districts, especially a district this size, you know, that's going to take a timeline laid out and reminders and education regarding how you move forward.
Terrific. Thanks so much, Diane. Let's turn another technology presented in the Horizon Report to become mainstream K-12 practice in the next 12 months or so is mobile learning. Vicki, you offered to share what you described to me as your district's realistic and successful approach to mobile learning. So tell us about your experiences there in La Crosse.
I sure will, Vicki. Let me bring up a slideshow that I have for you. Thank you very much, Vicki. In the school district of La Crosse, we have a digital learning program that we began a while ago. It's our one-to-one program. Our district is located on the Great Mississippi River in Wisconsin. We have about 7,000 students that we serve with a number of school district employees as well as school buildings. We have a kind of a challenging economic situation in La Crosse where we're landlocked, and so our economic development is always a very important part of our conversation as we look to educating our students. We do have a very strong commitment to our to excellence in learning in our schools, and so we end up with a number of choice and charters that are supported by the public schools. But all of that together kind of has led us to where we are today through continual conversation about what our learning environment needs. It really became evident that our shared community device model of labs and carts and a few machines in classrooms really wasn't meeting the instructional needs and learning needs of our teachers and our students. And so they really collectively began to say to us, we need to do something different, we need to do something different. So we really kind of have a philosophy here in La Crosse, given the economic challenges that we face, that we believe we need to provide tools and resources and materials for all of our students, just as we've done for years in providing them with textbooks and materials. We went through the process of bringing your own device in a number of our schools as a precursor to us going and supporting a total one-to-one program in grades 6-8 this fall. But what we found was that the equity of access and the equity of resources to our students wasn't there, and we wanted to have more of an equitable environment for them. So we moved to, over the last number of years, we've been working on transforming our classrooms, working with the framework from Rubin. And our teachers can probably describe this model much better than many of us can, because they really infused it into their work with the Common Core. They see the commonality and this as a real framework to use as they work with 21st century skills, as well as our library folks work with ALA standards and move that along. They have found themselves making change based on this model in a more practical way than other things that we've used in the past with technology and with the training that we've provided them. So why did we do mobile learning in La Crosse? Well, as we moved through those stages, as I talked about before, we really began with the learning that we wanted our students to experience. And what we determined is that we wanted a learning environment that was project-based, it was highly content-rich and available, and that it was differentiated, and it moved us from that substitution to that transformation in learning experiences. The device we selected for our middle school one-to-one was iPads, i.e. the iTunes U environment that we have created here. And the reason we chose that is because we really looked for a device that met those learning needs, but that met the needs of all of our content areas and moved us forward in that one-to-one beyond where our teachers thought that we were mostly at this point was in that substitution arena. So our middle school students today will tell you, after we piloted it last spring with an entire 7th grade in one of our middle schools, and it worked very well, so we moved fully into our 6-8 implementation. Our students will tell you that they're really engaged in their learning a whole lot more because they have these devices in their hands. They'll tell you that they're a little angry because their teachers are expecting more of them. They're finding that they have available to them more in-depth content. As the teachers create their iTunes U courses for distribution of content, teachers are able to differentiate and create tasks and things that are there for them and do it more quickly and easily. Their parents have access to the resources as well, those that we make available on our public site, but we have many courses that teachers are doing that are still private because of for a number of reasons they've chosen to not make them available on the public side. But the students will also tell you that not only getting their content through this way, being able to use QR codes to access videos in their flipped classroom environment, as well as utilizing our Moodle and our Edmodo environment. They have a set of tools available to them on the iPads that let them work 24/7. They utilize the productivity tools, they utilize the collaboration tools. We did move into a Google Gmail environment this fall, first time that La Crosse ever gave email accounts to their students. We always allowed students to use their own. And so all of that collectively has made for a real collaborative environment that we didn't have before we had devices in the hands of kids. But because these devices let the kids have availability to all of those tools and they can download that content before they go home, they don't need access 24/7, and they don't, in terms of being tethered to the internet. And so our families that don't have that access and can't get to a place that have that access, those students are finding just as much success as others in what they do. Where were the hurdles? And I think that anytime people across this nation and in other countries move to a one-to-one, they really find that every environment has its own hurdles. And in our school district, we had leadership and we had the early adopters who really wanted us to move quickly. And we found that although we had pilots and we had things moving into the one-to-one arena slowly, just having those early adopters wanting this technology doesn't really impact what happens in the classroom in terms of that culture of learning, as well as what teachers need to and administrators need to be thinking about to be ready for a one-to-one. So about a year ago, we really spent the time more directly focusing on the planning for the one-to-one, but previous to that, we spent a lot of time, and we still do, no matter where we are. Folks talk about working with technology, how it enhances learning, and collectively we have a vision that within a number of years here, we think hopefully by next year we will have one-to-one 312 with learning centers in our K-2 environment. So I think patience really was kind of the biggest hurdle in terms of, it's really not a hurdle, but in terms of utilizing patience so that we could make this successful, and that's really what we were able to do. Diane talked a little bit about the 3 things to help people move forward, and if there were 3 things we could say from La Crosse, it would really be that mobile learning is really all about learning. You need to be sure to start there when determining your path. Include your educators, your parents, your students, your administration, but focus on that learning. And it's all about teaching, and recognizes the changes that staff have, that they bring to the classroom today, that their professional experience and their qualified teaching skills bring to that classroom, so that you are building upon those and recognizing the change in your environment as some folks retire and other teachers come in to what you're doing. And then, of course, in a mobile environment, it's all about technical readiness. And supporting your technical staff with that same culture of continuous learning that you support for your teachers, administrators, is very, very important. Whether you're in a district with one sole person that is trying to provide all the technology support, administration and community needs to understand that there are things that we need to learn in the technical arena that make us able to support those changes in learning and those changes in teaching. So in La Crosse, we're really happy to say that our initial one-to-one in grades 6-8 have really worked pretty well. We are looking to make an additional change to that as we move ahead. So that's where we are in La Crosse.
Great, Vicki. Really interesting points, and I like the takeaways you kind of left for the audience. I also, we forget that need for patience, don't we? The patience in planning. Can you share a little bit more with us? You've had a comprehensive kind of plan for the implementation. Can you give us some more detail on how you helped prepare your teachers really to know best practice and to become comfortable? Were there some things that were ahas to you in that process, or some tips you could give to other people on the professional development needs and how to approach that with your teachers?
I sure can. Having done implementations of technology over a number of years, the last 20 years, I have to say that this implementation of our one-to-one was one of the most encouraging things we've ever done, that I've ever had an opportunity to be a part of. And listening to our teachers and listening to them say, this is what we need first, second, and third to make this work. So we started this journey by providing our teachers with the devices that they needed. A number of years ago, portable devices they needed to start changing their practice and their productivity and their professional work. And at the same time, giving them enough support through staff development, through institutes such as our Blended Learning Institute, Summer Institute that we do each summer, as well as providing after-school workshops that are really focused on specific topics. All of those things collectively worked, but in this particular case, we provided our teachers then iPads the May before we were going to roll this out, and gave them an opportunity to come and get a couple hours of training. And it was very interesting because they, all we needed to do was really show them the basics about how to function in this environment, but we focused totally on the environment of how do you prepare and distribute content, and how do you develop that in such a way that you can differentiate what you're trying to do in the classroom and utilize that as the basis for teaching the tool. And that was one of the most transformational things we did from a staff development perspective, and it really changed everything. Then over the summer, we had teachers and our library media specialists develop courses of how to get started with technology in your classroom in a one-to-one. And they put together units that at the beginning of the school year, when the students received their iPads, we handed them out to homeroom all the way across the entire building. And so they were all ready to go. The students, their accounts were ready, everything was ready to go. And each hour of the day, the staff took one of those units out of an iTunes U course and taught certain skills to students. So all the teachers, all the students did everything at the same time all day long. And we were amazed at how quickly the students and the staff just took this and went with it. Our technical staff was at the sites. We got there at 7 in the morning and we're all nervous and wondering what's going to happen. And by 9:30 we were gone. The one-to-one just worked. And it was all that pre-planning and all that work together, as well as working directly with our staff in those teacher leaders that we worked with to make this happen. The transformation in our classrooms right now, you can walk in and see quote-unquote flipped activities going on. You can see creativity happening. You can see collaboration happening among students. You can see teachers having people turn things in electronically. It's just working.
Congratulations on all of your success there, Vicki. Very, very helpful information.
Thank you.
So we've talked about the technologies expected to become mainstream in K-12 practice in the next 12 months. The Horizon Report also points to some technologies that will become more mainstream more in the next 2 to 3 year horizon. So Tom, let's turn to you. Congratulations on your new position at Virginia Commonwealth University. And until recently, I know you were at Henrico County Public Schools in Virginia, where I've heard a lot about the impressive work you were doing with open content there. You told me you have a fairly open view on the definition of open. So tell me and the rest of us more about that and what you have seen in your work.
All right. Thank you, Vicki. I'll try and breeze you through this, starting from where we were in Henrico County and are now, for that matter. Henrico County is in a fairly unique position. It's a fairly large district, about 49,000 students, about 40% economic deprivation, majority, minority, all that sort of stuff. And I think what is fairly unique about Henrico is we've had a one-to-one laptop initiative in 6 through 12 since about 2001. So when it comes to open educational resources, we've been playing around with this on the margins and making some real gains for quite a while. Now, David Wiley is one of the big people on this, and this is an open educational resource, essentially, since I took this picture at one of his presentations and licensed it under Creative Commons. And really, Dr. Wiley's definition of OER is any kind of teaching material, textbooks, syllabi, lesson plans, videos, that allows you to do the following: free and unfettered access, and then free permission to engage in the 4 R's, which remix, all that sort of stuff. But what I would like to argue is that almost from the start, we're ending up in a place that you don't necessarily want to be. A lot of things designated as educational are kind of this: gross, pre-chewed food. We have this beautiful media landscape out there, and I think it's important that we take advantage of the exciting things that exist in their unchewed state. I think, and that's a big part of this. So, for instance, this is an image from the Commons in Flickr, the Flickr Media Commons. It is an invitation card to an execution. There's really exciting stuff out there, primary source material that is just readily available. This came to me because not only do I kind of browse through the Flickr Commons at times, but I've also subscribed to the feed of content from there. So this RSS feed kind of throws all this different media content through a filter where I can kind of chop off the or siphon off the cream, so to speak. There are so many exciting places out there to find really great open educational resources, although they may not be focused on that kind of educational market in the way we typically think about it. But I think that's part of what makes them good and interesting. This, for instance, is the Internet Archive, which has an insane amount of content, but in particular, I found it really interesting historically and in terms of English and sociology and psychology, for that matter, being able to breeze back through and see television commercials from the 50s and 60s, from drive-in theaters. There's all sorts of content in here that's really beautiful and exciting. That's kind of a raw material piece, but there's also some really exciting stuff going on in the media that I think we can gain from. This is a comic called XKCD, but it's a comic around math and physics, and each week he does a really exciting physics problem, like the idea that if you stir tea, it's kinetic energy, could you actually heat up your tea by spinning? So he breaks down all the different possibilities there in a really humorous and interesting way. But it's just out there, ready to be used in all sorts of ways on the open web. And I think the other thing that is exciting is the multimedia, and the sophistication there is growing as well. This is some local Virginia historians, President Ayers of the University of Richmond and a couple other guys from University of Virginia, but they do a podcast that focuses on the 3 tiers of 18th, 19th, and 20th century history with a particular topic. In this case, Columbus and American memory. And not only do they interview experts, they do it in a really humorous and engaging style, and then they give you different possibilities in terms of resources, the transcript, the musical annotations, all here for free and available to you to use. And that's kind of the media side of things. I think it's also really exciting to see the tools that are available and how that starts to bridge the gap between consumption and construction and interaction. If you've ever seen Hans Rosling's stories using this this tool called Gapminder to start to analyze, historical trends in terms of economics and infant mortality, like this is just an amazing tool, and one that you can get access to in terms of uploading your own data through Google Spreadsheets. You also have opportunities like this. This is just a custom map I built in Google Maps to start to talk about U.S. history and to make it a more multimedia and engaging experience. So we've had, fourth, third graders creating maps like this that are collaborative, online, and interactive in a lot of different ways that enable you to get at different kinds of understandings. And it's important to realize that there's a larger community around here building these sorts of things. Google Lit Trips is Google Maps. It's kind of works of literature portrayed through Google Maps, and this is available here where you can drill down and start to see, you've already got all these as raw resources that are available to use in your classroom right now, but you also have the potential down the road to make your own or to customize the ones that you bring. I think it's also important to look at the energy people are putting into things that you could then use in the classroom. This is a blog called Shorpy, but it's just a guy who scans historical photographs in and puts them online. And I think what's also exciting here is he'll challenge the community when he doesn't know certain things about a photograph, and seeing people come together and do historical research to determine, where was this? Who were those kids? That sort of thing, and being able to see like some of that passion and interest in history there live, in addition to using these sorts of resources. And there are similar ones for things like science. This is Fresh Photons, that's focusing on microscopic images at this point and all sorts of other things. But these are just people out there in the wild doing exciting things that teachers are able to use all their energy. Think of them kind of as unpaid interns who are harvesting the web for all sorts of exciting things. Even Reddit, which often gets a bad rap in different environments, this is just a whole subreddit that colorizes historical photographs, which is a really exciting thing to have happening. These people are putting really professional work into making these photographs more what our students are used to seeing, and it certainly makes them feel less like relics of the past and enables a different lens of analysis and interest. So you got all this stuff going on online that's open, at least open in the sense right at the baseline of being easily accessible for your students and your teachers. So it's kind of, how do you build workflows to make this work for them? And one of those things is like, this is an RSS aggregator called Feedly, where I feed all the sorts of things I'm interested in. Some of it's image, some of it's technology, some of it's history. But I'm able to kind of parse through this fairly quickly and be able to skim that cream off and work it into my classroom, and also forward it on to other people who might be interested in it. And this kind of is the next stage. We use Digo, which is social bookmarking, to help us aggregate this. So this is my own individual account. But we joined a group with HBCPS ITRTs where multiple people can push this content here, and then other teachers could use it. In this case, this is a Spanish 2 group where other teachers are able to see what other people are bookmarking for resources, and the specialist herself skims the top off and feeds it into a more curricular vetted content area. And we build that with things like WordPress. This is a kindergarten language arts curriculum laid out, but it's also feeding in her Digo bookmarks so that when she tags something as a K4, it comes into this blog as a post where people can comment, and it's kind of a more traditional format that makes some people more comfortable. And then finally, you can also use open tools to aggregate open content in ways that change instruction. This is our Henrico 21 site. It's dedicated to 21st century lesson plans. So when teachers submit to this contest, which we run once a year, they have a templated format, and it feeds into this blog. So now it's widely available to the world, not just our teachers, but it is also, put up here in a very visual way, which enables rating, voting, different categorical elements, and multimedia embedding of all sorts of stuff. So this becomes the teaser. They can download both student artifacts and the full-on lesson plan in Word format here. But it's a way to create kind of an exciting community of learning built on an open tool and full of open educational resources that start to change instruction.
Tom, thank you. I think we were probably all taking notes. Those are awesome resources, and I think really give us a good visual on some exciting elements to bring into teaching and learning. So thank you for those. I've got time for just a quick question. This could be an exhaustive conversation, but as you're working with teachers, what do you do to try to help them navigate this mass of resources and be keen evaluators of material? How are they collaborating with one another? Kind of what's the direction you've given them?
Well, I think to a large extent it's guiding them on an initial start and then coming up with workflows that allow different levels of view for different people. Because one of the key things is this content specialist involvement in seeing what's being used. Like this enables a whole nother lens that was not possible before. And that's awesome. And it's even awesome if they're doing stuff you don't like. Like if you see they bookmarked that online workshop or worksheet that you didn't want them to use and lots of people went there and it's popular, that opens up a whole nother conversation. And so this is very valuable data even when it's not what you want to see. So really, our conversation is really focused on showing great examples, setting up workflows that make this possible and accessible, because everybody's busy and overwhelmed. So how do you make what you give them really, really valuable? And it's playing different people who are passionate and interested in different levels and different areas, and using that energy to focus that value. Not everyone's going to do this. But finding the people who will and using them to provision that more curricular, vetted, traditional type of aggregation, that's what you do. And I think that's where this is really exciting.
Terrific. Thanks again for your remarks. In fact, thanks to each of you for letting us benefit from the practical suggestions you've given us drawn from your experiences with some of these emerging technologies in the Horizon Report. Before we conclude today, I'd like to spend just a couple of minutes and avail myself of your expertise in another area. I think the Horizon Report can be a real springboard for conversations with local stakeholders about some of these emerging technologies and their potential to impact teaching and learning. But I'm curious for many of you, how do you start the conversation with your local stakeholders? How do you bring them into the process of investigating new technologies that might help to solve problems or local needs that you have? As a technology leader, how do you facilitate discussion around emerging technologies to tackle the big problems facing your district? Any of you?
Well, Vicki, I think some of it is determining what the goals are or what the problems are, and then looking at really concrete examples of how those have been solved or achieved by others, be they within the district or without. But if there's one thing that's really beautiful, it's those prime examples and pointing people at it and having very specific discussions. One of the things we found to be key was it's easy to say something like 21st century skills and pretend we agree on what that means, or student engagement. Like, these words are so big and have so many nuances of understanding. You better get your vocabulary straight and some agreement on what you're talking about before you go down these paths, or that just leads to frustration and anger. So really defining what the purpose is, what that word means, and then looking at examples and really breaking down how did they get there, what would we do, how does that fit within our culture. So that's a continuous cycle for us.
I like that, breaking it down. breaking it down.
In La Crosse, we've used the Horizon Report for the last number of years as kind of the impetus for our conversation, where depending on the group that we're working with, our administrators, our principals, our instructional leaders, our teachers, even the folks that we work with our secretarial staff and our technical staff, because that report gives us an idea of what are those trends and where are we going, and what are people out there seeing that is something that has really permeated our learning environments. And so just by sharing that information and then following what Tom said about providing examples, giving people information that they need on an ongoing basis. It's not a one-time shot, it's a conversation. That really has pulled La Crosse along on the continuum.
Terrific. Diane, what about you?
For us, it's those conversations as well. You know, sharing those successes in the classroom. I've gotten a lot of emails from teachers, you know, talking about how they're using Google in the classroom and how kids who are in study hall or perhaps homesick know that class time is during this time and other kids will be online working on collaborative work. And so those kids log in from home or they log in from their smartphone in their study hall and they're right in the conversations. So sharing those stories of success and, you know, being out there with other technology leaders who are sharing these stories and bringing those things back and using that as a conversation starter is really the drive for innovation here. Looking at, again, what Tom said, the needs, thinking differently, thinking beyond the way it's always been done, streamlining the processes you already have so that those are, again, within the culture, and you can then start innovating, dreaming, trying different things, being comfortable with perhaps some things failing before you move forward. And so it's a mindset as well, and the ability for people to try things and to experiment and to share those things and then provide that conversation and that ongoing support with these new ideas. That's what helps drive all school districts forward.
Great. So as we close this session, I'd like you to think about questions you can consider with local stakeholders to help them reimagine learning. There are two examples here, or just craft one or more of your own. As we heard our presenters talk about today, rather than leading with the technology, work with your stakeholders to identify needs or the big instructional problem your stakeholders are facing. Then consider if there are emerging technologies that hold promise for providing some kind of a solution. I do think that starting with the needs helps move the conversation we've all been talking about from technology to really improving learning. We did mention in the last session the Horizon Report K-12 Edition Toolkit, developed by Crosse in partnership with NMC, with generous support from HP. These two suggested follow-up activities are just excerpts from that toolkit. Try these and find many more activities, discussion starters, and strategies for starting the conversation with your local stakeholders. And if you haven't already done so, download the report and toolkit now and use the feedback form to let us know how you're using these resources. So I just want to go ahead and thank everybody for being with us today. Thank you so much to Diane and to Tom and Vicki. And please join us for the next session when we're going to be talking about 3 more emerging technologies. We'll be talking about 3D printing, learning analytics, and also virtual and remote laboratories. Thanks so much.